Hello, welcome to Third Style Garage. This is my name is Doug, and this is my least favorite edge floor sander, and also my favorite edge floor sander that I own in the whole world. And this has been quite the saga, rebuilding this guy. And let's dive into episode 3, which we're gonna work on fixing the wiring and reassembly, and see if it runs, how long it runs, what it runs like, and what we need to do to keep it running. So thanks for being part of Third Style Garage. I'd love it if you'd subscribe if you haven't already, or give it a thumbs up. And thanks for being part of Third Style Garage. Have a great day. I have just a couple tasks left before I reassemble this. One of them is I really want to get this light working again. The light mounts right here. Can you see that? Mounts right here. This is the front of the edge sander. It's upside down right now, but then, so as you use it, it should shine a light out on the area that you're working in. This was not working when I got it. There's a socket in there. It takes like one of those automotive bulbs that go down and they like turn in, and there's a tab on each side, and there's 2 electrical tabs on the bottom. But I am fairly sure this is a straight 120 AC bulb instead of a 12 volt DC like automotive cars are. So I'm doing a little research on that to make sure I can get the right bulb. But I want to take this out because I need to put new wires on, and I would like to clean the contacts because they are just kind of a dark brown color. And now's my chance to clean them up and get rid of years of corrosion. So let's kind of see what this looks like. Like everything else, it is packed full of dust. I think I might get the air compressor and blow that out and see how that looks. Like a little air blast, and that's much better. You can see, at least I can see underneath there, there are 2 more screws that attach these wires to the contacts. Looks like the wire's just wrapped around the screw. Probably not how it was done at the factory, although I have no idea. Probably not the best way. So I'm gonna work on making up a couple new wires and then putting some eyelets on the end with some good shrink wrap so that I won't have problems in the future. Again, this one too just kind of has the wire wrapped around it. So I'm not going to film making new wires and eyelets. That's not real exciting. I'm going to work on taking these contacts out and hit them on the wire wheel though, so they get cleaned up. All right, so I got the new wires put on, just left them a little bit long. Sandblasted inside here. Hopefully you can get a look at those contacts. They're all nice and clean now. I also took the casing and just took a little Scotch-Brite piece to it with a little oil to clean it up a touch. There are people that polish things like crazy, and I don't have the patience for that, especially when there's no mechanical or performance advantage to it. Getting ready to assemble this again. This fan had started to come apart a little bit. Those pieces are just pinched together. So I put 3 little tack welds on here and then ground them smooth just to strengthen that up. This is where the brushes roll. So I'm gonna just take a little bit of Scotch-Brite and freshen that up a little bit, make it nice and shiny. And then I will lightly do the same thing to the end of the brushes. I don't think that really does much. But I feel like it just gets down to fresh new material. And things should run a little bit smoother and a little bit cooler the better the contacts are. Doesn't that look better? Okay, I think it is time to start reassembly. So I got the new bearing on, and just tapped it on with a socket. It slid on a pretty loose press fit. And now this spur gear, remember it's a left-hand thread, so as the motor runs and you put a load on the sander, this thing just tightens itself. I'm gonna tighten this thing down up until it is snug on that bearing. Getting this thing tight could be a challenge, so let's give it a try. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it was, oh, I'm going the wrong way. That's why. Remember, left-hand thread. Boy, muscle memory is hard that way. All right, I think I'm gonna have to hold this in the vise or something to get that on. Really have the vise held on pretty gently with like 5 layers of rag in there, just because I don't want to damage anything. Almost there. Nice. Time to put the brush holders back in. Cap goes on the outside. You can tell which way the brush goes in because there's a groove there and a groove there. So you need to make sure that the threads on these are a little munged up. So I don't know if you can see those slots in there, but they need to go up and down. So just want to get it aligned that way. They don't need to be perfect, but you want them fairly close. There's a sleeve, I'm assuming a non-conductive sleeve that is pressed into the housing or the casing so that there's not electrical connection between the brush holder and the casing. But before I tap this in, I want to put the cap on so that when I tap on the cap, it doesn't, mushroom out the end of these threads. See how it looks. You see it coming through down there? Sticking far enough through now for me to get that collar on. So I will need to reach down in there and put this collar on, which is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but we can do it. We can do hard things, right? All right, so the 2 brush holders are in with the wires attached. It's time to get the stator in. 2 long screws should sit down in there. The key is just going to make sure that the wires aren't under tension or bound or going to get caught in any moving parts. So it's got to be just methodical and careful about it. I hope that lines up with the screws. I don't know how I'm going to turn it if it doesn't. All right, so I'm getting it to go in. I'm getting the stator in. I had a hard time lining up those 2 screws, and I hate to be one of those guys who creates a video who doesn't show the hard stuff, but I had to pull this thing in and out several times. I would get it down, I think it would turn a little bit and the holes wouldn't line up, and tried to put some marks eyeing down where the holes are, and I got it close. And then what I did this time is I got it most of the way down and dropped the screws in, so the stator is about that far off of the mounting plate or the mounting surface, which gave the screws a little bit of wiggle room. And now I've gotten the screws started in the hole, which means I should be able to push this down the rest of the way like that, and the screws will guide it. So now I can tighten it down. And then I will go back and reevaluate where all the lines are, electrical wires are, to make sure nothing's getting pinched or cracked. Not really cracked, but you know what I mean. Bent too hard, or will get rubbed on the armature. Many of you are more knowledgeable in motors than I am. You will probably notice that I've called things by the wrong name. I think I called the armature the stator the other day. This is the stationary part, that's the stator. The other part is the winding or the armature or something, so I apologize if I'm using the wrong names. I am not an expert, I'm just a guy who's willing to try. Okay, now time to get the wires to lay down nice and neat. Okay, now that the stator is in, it's time to put the light housing in. Haven't ordered the light bulb yet. I'm waiting to verify that it's the right one before I place the order. Online, I'm getting a lot of my parts and information on the American Sander website. I think they may have bought out this line of Porter cable or Clark sanders. Just seems like everything points back to American Sander. So I'm waiting for part information on that, but I'm gonna go ahead and reassemble it in the meantime. So the cover goes over this like such, and then I'm fairly sure that this hole sneaks the wires up above the stator, and then I'm gonna have to try to catch them and fish them out the side here. Maybe I should just do one at a time. Oh, look at that. Caught it right on my finger. Then this will get hooked and powered by the toggle switch. Voila. Okay, that's good. Making progress. As I work on reassembling this, so this armature with a helical spur gear on the end of it fits into the bottom end, and you can see the matching other helical gear is in there, and this needs to spin kind of in there. Then as this turns clockwise, the drum spins counterclockwise. First time I stuck this in, it spun around and then stopped. And that was because I had a high spot on that gear that I still have a bit of resistance right there where I think I might need to file that gear and smooth it out just a little bit. But it's hard to know whether I'm holding this armature straight. So I'm gonna try assembling it and see how it feels once it's together. I don't have the motor bushes in yet, so it should drop in pretty easily. Here's the new bearing that we put in. It goes right into this spot here. fell. Hope that didn't hurt you. Doesn't seem to have hurt my phone. All right, and this should slide in there. So here's where I am in the process, and a couple of problems I'm running into. Where I messed up these teeth, as it turned on the main gear, there was a bump as it went around. And so I've done a bunch of careful smooth and filing to get that to run better. And it is a lot better. It's not as smooth as I'd like, so I may have to continue to work on that. But here's the other challenge that I'm running into. Here's the bearing at what would be the top of the case. And if you can see that, that should be a kind of a press fit in there, but it's loose. And when I stick the armature in, the top end of, or I guess the top end of the shaft down here has a wobble in it. And I'm assuming that's because the old bearing wore out and was vibrating within that housing. So I'm trying to figure out what my options are. Can I somehow get a shim in there to restore the press fit? And I'm not quite sure how I would accomplish that or get the right size shim. What I think I'm going to try to do is this is cast aluminum, so it's fairly soft, is to get a punch and just do punches all the way around the circle, and try to mushroom it down to decrease the diameter and help it to press on that again. So I don't know if that'll work. That's what I'm going to try. So that didn't accomplish exactly what I'd hoped to accomplish. I was able to get this spot here compressed a little bit, but then I felt like I was starting to see cracks in the housing. I don't know if I actually did or not, but it made me nervous. The bearing's now tighter, but you can still see there's a little bit of a gap around this side, and a little bit of a gap here. So it made the hole a little more oval shaped. So I'm not real confident that that's going to last. So I really want to find a way to fill that in and make sure that the bearing doesn't spin. And at this point, this is going a little different than expected. I think what I'm going to try to do is mix up some JB Weld and put just a thin layer of JB Weld as a metal epoxy all the way around the circle, and then squish the bearing in so that it fills those gaps. So that way there will be, the bearing will be held all the way around. It's not a significant load on it, so I think that will hold at least for a good long while. And then as the bearing wears out, I'm sure the JB Weld will give out too, and the bearing may be able to come out some point down the road if anybody tries to do this again. So let's try that. All right, I have a very hard time. So the JB Weld is in there. I could not figure out a way to show you how to get my camera in there while I did it. So I have a thin layer all the way around, and now I'm just gently trying to insert the bearing because it needs to go in fairly straight. All right, so I have the edger reassembled, and my concern is that I expected this to spin, you know, completely freely, and you can hear that, and I think that is the spur gear interacting with the other gear that's in here. And I don't think it should be that way. But I don't know if that's, I'm just gonna power it up and see what it sounds like before I finish tearing it all back apart just to work on that gear again. I just want to hear how bad it sounds. So I have it hot wired in. This is not really recommended, but I'm just gonna plug it in hot wired and just see how loud it is on the bench. We'll see how good or bad of an idea this is. Not as bad as I thought, but not great. I think it needs to come back apart again. I have had other jobs go much more smooth than this. Hello friends, I'm back. It's been a few days since I've had time to work on this and a little bit to build my patience back up. So I've had the top half and the bottom half off several times and have done just a lot of fine tooth filing on the spur gear. And I would put it back together, spin the armature until I felt a little bit of a bump. I would take it, mark that spot, take it apart, sand, file a little bit where that bump wasn't, put it back together until now I'm to the point where it's pretty smooth all the way around. There's no like where it would stick a little bit, which makes me think that I've got any of the interference is taken care of. So I reassembled it, put the brushes back in, and have it hot wired. So I'm gonna plug it in on the bench, stand off to the side, and just test and see. I'm imagining that gear will be a little bit louder now because it's a little less uniform, but hopefully it will run fine. So let's give this a test. It's a little louder than I would like, but it runs a whole lot smoother. The reason I took apart is this whole thing would go brrrr, and you could feel the bearings flapping around in there. Now my end goal is not to restore a really valuable piece of machinery, although these things new are like 3,000 bucks, which I could never afford. But I do want one that will work for a while. At least I've got a lot of hardwood floors in my house to finish yet. So my goal is to get this back together, wire the switch up, put the fan back on the top, and then have a machine that without much money, my time is fairly free, will be able to work for a good long while yet. So I do need to buy a light bulb for this yet. Now that I know that it's running, I think I will place an order for that. And then we'll show you the finished product. So the reason I highly recommend taking pictures of how this goes apart, because then when you're putting it back together, you can figure out, oh my gosh, I lost it already. What the heck? Man, I can have something and then 3 seconds later lose it. It's kind of my superpower under the hammer. Okay, sorry about that. This spacer goes on there underneath this key. Spacer has to go in first and then the key. So pictures helps with that. I recommend taking pictures. All right, back at it. Okay, she is finally back together. Couple mistakes I made along the way. Did not pay attention to how I wired this switch, and I had the on up and the off down, and this casting is the opposite. Off is up, down is on, which works well. That way when your hands are on it, you can just flip that switch up to turn it off. The other decision I made, which caused me to rewire it, is I wired the power to the light bulb here. First time I wired it downstream of the switch so it would turn on and off as you used it. And then I thought later, I'm gonna wire that so that it is on all of the time, so that as you're getting ready, you can see. But also with older machines like this that don't have a safety default to off, that way anytime it's ever plugged in, the light will be on and you can see kind of for safety's sake that it's on. So should be back together and running. Let's flip the switch and see. That was disappointing. Does help to put the plug in. Switch is off. Yeah, that kind of scared me for a second. All right, here we go. That wasn't good. I think I got a problem with one of the brushes, or one of the wires got pinched. Dang it. She comes apart again. All right, so we turned it on. There were a bunch of sparks coming out of here that I could see through these openings, and it seemed like it was shorting out. So my best guess was one of these wires was rubbing the armature in there, and it shorted out. But looking at these, all the wires seem to be fine. I am noticing though that, let me find a way to point at this. This brass housing that houses the brush, come on camera, focus on the right thing. I am noticing that this brass housing that houses the motor brush, there's not supposed to be a gap here. This should be pushed farther in towards the bottom of the screen, this direction. And if I look, try to get a peek at the one on the other side, that one looks more appropriate. And you can see the brush. Sorry, it's so hard to get a light in here. Okay, so right in here, you can see the same brass housing right there. And that is the electrical brush sticking out of it right there. And you can see there's a gap between this armature and that brass housing. There's not a gap on this one. So I think this housing needs to get pushed back towards the edge of the casing. So as you can see from the time lapse, I took the whole stupid thing apart again. And I don't know why I think I love projects like this so much. I think it's because they're exciting at the beginning and they're exciting when you succeed at the end. Sometimes in the middle, they just stink. So here is one of the leads to one of the brushes that rubbed up against the armature and melted and wore through. So I need to replace this lead. I think it is a little too long. So I think I will cut it here and then just re-solder it to there, and it will be about 1.5 inches shorter. And I think that will be okay. It might help there be less extra wire in there to get caught in things. So I'm gonna unsolder this and solder it back in and then start the reassembly process again. Wire is fixed. I'm gonna put you on time lapse while I just do all of the reassembly again. I'm putting it back together and I'm taking a little more time. Should have done this the first time to be more a little careful and neat with the wires. Put some zip strips in here to hold them together, and that keeps all of them out of the way of the armature. So I will tighten this up and I will look down there one more time before I finish reassembling it again. Okay, I think that's going to probably wrap up this video. Not one of my best video productions ever. Sorry about some of the shots not being fantastic. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you're working on one like this, I hope it was moderately helpful. What went well? It's back together. It works well. The bearing rattle is gone and cleaned up. The drum was shaking.